every time Caitlin gets fouled, we can't make it seem like she was assaulted. Why like a Stephen A. Smith? It was that important to you to run the Kennedy Carter hip check, right? That was everywhere. But yet, you didn't even discuss what Alyssa Thomas did to Angel Reese. Anytime a basketball play happens towards Caitlin, it's because players are envious, they're targeting her, they're jealous, they're haters, they're racist. I keep going on and on. Kennedy Carter is one of the best guards in the league.
Cheryl Swoopes herself. She recently spoke on her podcast, Queens of the Court, and didn't mention the rookie when speaking of Indiana's rise in the standing. Here's what Cheryl Swoopes had to say. Look at this quote here. I think the Olympic break really helped Indiana. I'm going to shout out to Lexi Hull. I'm a big Lexi Hull fan. Lexi Hull shot the leather off the ball in their game against Seattle. Kelsey Mitchell is just stroking. She's just shooting the basketball. Aaliyah Boston, almost a triple-double. If Indiana continues to play the way they're playing like this, they too are going to move up in the standings, end quote.
Cheryl Swoopes, former WNBA player. We all know that. Current host of Queen of the Court podcast. She had some thoughts. She's had some thoughts previously about Caitlin. She would later have to apologize of those thoughts being uninformed, she shoots like 60 shots a game, just being a little bit inflammatory and critical without any actual analysis. And she apologized for that during the women's college season, and she's now stepped in it again.
It looks like Duncan from ESPN is stepping up to back Cheryl Swoopes following her recent viral remarks. The ongoing situation with Swoopes continues as Duncan chats about it on her podcast. She's been careful in her comments about Caitlin Clark and Swoopes, especially after receiving criticism a few weeks ago while attempting to clarify her stance.
By saying that Indiana is in the playoffs right now without Caitlin Clark. By saying that Katie Lou Samuelson's really more integral in terms of her two-way ability than Caitlin, and also saying that, and I don't besmirch her for this because lots of people are making arguments for whether they think that it is Angel Reese or Caitlin Clark that should be Rookie of the Year. I've said that I think it's Caitlin, but that I could understand someone making an argument for the other. It's not hate to make an argument for Angel Reese. So I don't take any issue with that part. But the other part, it just feels like there is something there, and I'm not really sure what is not connecting with Cheryl and why.
From a media perspective, it's vital to cover all players rather than just those with whom you have personal connections. This is essentially what Swoopes conveyed on Twitter, explaining that she doesn't comment on Clark due to their lack of a personal relationship. However, many creators, even those without ties to Clark, have refrained from criticizing her. With each of Swoopes' remarks about the fever, it increasingly seems as though she might be coming across as resentful. I understand Duncan's perspective when she argues that not every critique aimed at Caitlin Clark should be labeled as hate. I completely see her point. However, Cheryl Swoopes' comments seem to target Caitlin specifically. It's clear that she has an issue with Caitlin, which is hard to ignore. Let's look at what Ella discussed in her podcast today.
And I don't know if some of that is driven in sort of the hurt that she felt from the fan base or some of the attacks that were leveled at her after she had those comments a few months ago. But this feels really, really, really off par. This just doesn't feel right at all. And it is starting to feel a little bit like hate from Cheryl, who just in this particular space, stop. If the Fever, who won a handful of games last year, are in the playoffs this year, then you have to understand that a large part of that is Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Either one of them. I would have accepted either one of those.
She called out those she believes are unjustly negative towards Caitlin. Having faced similar situations, I can relate to the criticism that arises from both sides of this issue. I also want to clarify any misunderstandings, so let's avoid further tweets about it. Elle made a compelling analogy comparing Caitlin to Voldemort from Harry Potter, suggesting that discussing her has become a sensitive topic. Praising Caitlin can make some feel like you're just trying to appease her fans, while criticism can lead to being labeled a hater. This creates a complicated atmosphere around conversations about her. The negativity seems to shadow any discussion about Caitlin, making it challenging to engage in a fair way.
Respectfully, Cheryl Swoopes, you have any idea how that makes you look? You have any idea how that serves to stain any kind of critique of Caitlin Clark, because that gives fodder to those who believe she's being hated on and ostracized to some degree? Do you realize that, Cheryl Swoopes, you're insane to do that?
It's not merely a debate about who's the better player, like Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. This situation is distinct, and it's understandable that some might prefer to avoid it entirely. Yet, as journalists, we must confront these issues, especially since Caitlin is such a significant figure in the sport. Recently, Dennis Rodman made a bizarre remark about LeBron, claiming he only has a layup. I was shocked to hear that. Then there's Anthony Edwards, who asserts that Michael Jordan was the best simply because players back then lacked skills, suggesting that today's athletes are significantly more talented. These are the types of debates we engage in, and they can certainly become heated. The situation with Caitlin Clark adds another layer of difficulty, making it tough to navigate. Some people having experienced racism and hostility may want to avoid these discussions entirely. Personally, I'm open to exploring them as it's part of our duty as journalists. After all, Clark is arguably the most discussed player in the WNBA this year.
No matter what stage you're on, if you're at the highest stage, there's always going to be people that are critiquing you. There's always going to be people that are complimenting you, and I think that just speaks to like how I was raised too. Like, you know, I've never been one to like weigh the opinions of the haters too much, or, you know, I was told, like, you know, at the level you feel all the praise, that's going to be the same level you feel all the hate. So, like, I feel like I just try to stay right in the middle. And
alongside other major stories, it's essential to foster an environment of understanding here. Criticizing someone for their opinions on this topic isn't constructive. There are many ready to jump on anyone who shows even a hint of negativity, eager to voice their disapproval.
Because Cheryl Swoopes, you're one of the greatest players ever in the history of basketball. See, you won a championship in college at Texas Tech. You won 3 Olympic gold medals. You won 4 WNBA championships. You know basketball. You know basketball better than me. You know basketball than any of the pundits. You know basketball better than most of the men that play basketball. There is no way in hell you just accidentally left Caitlin Clark's name out.
For some people, tackling this subject can feel so daunting that they'd rather just avoid it entirely. I completely understand that sentiment and want to recognize those who might be thinking, whatever I say, I'll face criticism, so I'll just skip it and focus on other topics instead. That perspective is definitely part of the dialogue. I recently came across a metaphor that struck a chord with me. Being at the top of a pyramid means you're exposed to scrutiny from every angle, and that's when the arrows start flying. Caitlin Clark is right at that peak, and the conversations surrounding her are incredibly diverse.
Of that soliloquy that you dropped about the Indiana fever. Stop it. You know that. Stop it. More. If you had talked about it more, they would have played more games. Like I had the power to go up to ESPN and say, you know, directors and producers and cameramans and everybody else flocked to the WNBA at the time when it wasn't nearly as popular as it was today.
It almost seems like some individuals might even embrace the criticism we've seen. Many commenters noted that depending on which metrics you look at, Elle has a solid argument, while Gary could also make a case in the MVP discussion.
This becomes, see, the women of the W are hating on Caitlin and they hate her. And we've covered that on this show plenty. What I appreciate is that with time, and with the benefit of hindsight on our side, I am noticing much more calm in terms of people saying, this is her opinion. This is not the opinion of everyone in the W. I think there have been enough cases of women in the W over the last few months supporting Caitlin, showing their support. I think there's been enough of that now that people can now take something that's seemingly inflammatory and give it and lay it at the feet of that person, as opposed to making it an entire diatribe on everyone in the W and how all of these Black women hate Caitlin Clark.
It's important to acknowledge that Caitlin Clark draws a lot of attention, and her influence is certainly making waves in the sports arena.
All Cheryl Swoopes did was validate all the speculation that there's folks hating on Caitlin Clark. That's all she did. Because to know basketball like Cheryl Swoopes does, to be as accomplished as she is, to be the Hall of Famer that she is, all accolades that are well-deserved. And I'm certainly not attacking Cheryl Swoopes the person because I think she's a wonderful person. She's certainly always been nothing but class and nice to me.
Let's move to our second story today. In a scenario where you'd expect a newcomer in the WNBA or NBA to concentrate on refining their skills, especially something as essential as making close-range shots, you might think their focus would be sharp. However, we often see highlights that feature players taking only a handful of shots and boosting their stats with offensive rebounds, and surprisingly, some fans actually cheer for that.
Other players are benefiting from it. It's not just them, it's not just this rookie class, but my favorite part about all of this has been seeing the rookies on the floor. And like everyone has always wondered, like, why doesn't the college fandom follow the follow them when they get to the pros? Because for so many years, rookies were just buried on the bench. Their confidence crushed, like snuffed out. And then the next season, they're like, oh, well, you're not good enough, so we're gonna just cut you
One would think these players would be in the gym, perfecting their craft instead. Consider a recent three-point shot attempted by Angel Reese during the Aces game. It definitely caught a lot of attention. It's evident that there are some areas in her game that need improvement, and you'd think a rookie would be putting in the hours to practice. Don't forget, she took a trip to Paris during the Olympic break, while other players, like Caitlin Clark, came back clearly having worked on their game.
Or we're gonna put you on another team because we don't think you belong here, we don't think you're good enough. So I've just been really excited for the young players getting an opportunity early to learn faster and get comfortable faster and like kind of cement themselves in these organizations earlier than like I barely played my rookie season. I wish I had the opportunity to get on the court my rookie year, but...
Meanwhile, Angel is busy launching her own show and podcast, and let's just say the sports community has plenty to say about it. This news just came out about an hour ago, so let's dive in. Honestly, I'd rather go through a root canal than watch it, but I have to say, it might actually benefit the channel. Who knows what she's going to say next? It's really strange how someone would want to come off as so unlikable. That entitled attitude at the end? Not a good look. I can't fathom why anyone would want to project that vibe, yet she seems to embrace it, and some people are definitely buying into it. It's just baffling. Now, let's talk about Angel Reese's podcast tour. Make sure to note these dates: 4 out of 13, 3 out of 15, 3 out of 12, and 5 out of 16. If you're wondering, those figures represent her field goal attempts and makes over the last 10 days. Seriously, what's happening? I usually enjoy when players launch their own podcasts, but as a rookie, I'd probably focus more on improving my game. But hey, I guess it's all about the cash, right? Of course, this has led to a ton of jokes about the situation. The podcast is called Unapologetically Angel, but some are joking it should be named Brick by Brick.
Dog, you can't teach that.
Okay.
I love that.
Let's be honest though, we probably won't be tuning in. I mean, really? Brick by Brick? I doubt there'll be much interest in that. I'm honestly taken aback. Who's actually tuning into this? It's unbelievable. She's having such a tough time with basketball that she's thinking about switching careers.
I don't really get to stand up for myself. I mean, I have great teammates. I have a great support system. I got my hometown. I got my family that stands up for me. I don't really get to speak out on things just because I just try to ignore, and I just try to stand strong.
I can't wrap my head around how she thought this would be received, but the backlash is fierce. Cheryl Swoopes should definitely be the first guest. Honestly, if Caitlin Clark appeared on the show, it would set records for sports podcasts. But I doubt Caitlin would bother with this kind of nonsense, which is exactly why their careers are heading in different directions. Still, if she could get Caitlin Clark, that would be my top choice for a guest. Then someone chimed in, what if they make the playoffs? Will it still be every Thursday? If it's not called Brick City, I'd be disappointed. This is sure to create a lot of viral moments. It might as well be named the Queen of Rebounding My Own Bricks. You just knew it would be a disaster. Another athlete starting a podcast. I don't watch any of them, to be honest. I hope her guest asks her, why can't you score? I'm surprised she can even fit this in around practice. Are they even practicing anymore? I mean, Angel just got tagged as the worst finisher in the league. It's hard to believe. Bounding and compacting might be more fitting terms.
A study by a sports market research firm found that the sport with the highest percentage of its fans influenced by sponsorships is the WNBA. That number is more than 81%. The study by SBRnet also found that among major sports, the WNBA has the highest percentage of social media users among its fans, and that social media is where they go to connect with leagues, teams, and players. All of it underscores the tremendous growth potential for the WNBA, and why a player like Angel Reese is perfect for this moment.
Someone remarked, you knew it would be bad. So let's clarify. Reese has the offensive skills of a janitor at a YMCA, chooses to go to Paris for influencer shots instead of improving her game, comes back, performs even worse offensively, and then launches a podcast. This one isn't really feeling the game. You could tell things were about to get a little chaotic, and wow, did they ever. We could have easily spent 3 hours just chatting about everything imaginable. I heard her say, I've got a big announcement, and I thought, Oh no, here comes another sponsorship pitch. I guess that makes sense. I really respect Baker Mayfield, but I can't help but think back to all those ads he did when he first joined the NFL. Sometimes I wonder if he wishes he had spent more time honing his skills instead. But hey, Baker has definitely bounced back, and you all know he's one of my favorite athletes to talk about here. That being said, she really has some significant weaknesses in her game, and it seems like her focus isn't quite there. It's honestly puzzling. You can see she has the physical talent, but this is still a professional sport where skill refinement is crucial. It's crazy. Having all that talent doesn't automatically lead to success. I just don't understand it. Some people might enjoy this kind of stuff, but I'd rather tackle a tough workout than listen to an athlete's podcast. If it's hosted by a former player, that's cool, but an active player? Not really my cup of tea. The Sky faced another tough loss, and it feels like they're really struggling. Honestly, it's starting to feel like the Sky are just giving up. I've never seen a team give up as obviously as the Sparks are right now.
I'm going to go out and do whatever it takes to win, and every single night, my teammates rely on my energy. So being able to continue the energy, even if we're down, even if we're up.
I still see Angel Reese as an all-star and one of the top 20 to 25 players in the league. The Sky's struggles and the Rookie of the Year race seeming settled might actually benefit Angel in the long run. She'll have more freedom to try new things and take risks without the pressure of the Rookie of the Year race hanging over her. Competing against someone like Aaliyah Boston makes it hard to play without the fear of failure, but now she can have an off night and still focus on finding her rhythm.
Now at FS1, had this to say about Angel Reese this week. Quote, Angel Reese, you can't be the big bad wolf and then kind of cry like Courage the Cowardly Dog. Nobody mourns when the villain catches an L. And Angel Reese, you're self-proclaimed to be the villain. I think that's a bit excessive. Like Emmanuel Acho. Got mad respect for him, but we don't have to always agree.
I really liked how she played toward the end of this game, and right now she's undoubtedly the best offensive rebounder in basketball.
I think that when you take into account the fact that this is a young lady, yes, she did wear the villain role on her sleeve, no doubt about that. She didn't do a lot to help herself when she was winning the NCAA championship last year against Iowa, and she was taunting Caitlin Clark.
While the Indiana Fever are attracting around 2 million. And let's not even get started on the Chicago Sky. They're not drawing much attention either. It's just the way it is. When it comes to video views, the Fever are outpacing the NFL, which is impressive, and content related to Caitlin Clark gets 5 to 10 times more views than anything NFL related. I'm not sure what that says, but the interest is clearly there.
But this morning, the college coach is not only under fire, but under investigation after reports that the majority of her roster has decided to leave.
Then you watch this old video about Swoopes, and you start wondering if there's something else going on here. Like, is race a factor in how she's treating Clark?
Turned Loyola College basketball coach Cheryl Swoopes is being investigated this morning amid allegations that she mistreated players.
It's wild to think about, but with all the stuff going on, it's a question that needs to be asked. Is she just another one of those WNBA players who hate on Clark because she's white?
It was the environment she created. I was belittled, humiliated, made to feel extremely small.
Cheryl Swoopes is really stirring the pot with her comments about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. She thinks the Indiana Fever could make the playoffs without Clark, but not the Chicago Sky without Reese. Fans are not happy.
Head coach since 2013. Last year, 5 of her players reportedly transferred to different programs. And this year, a reported 10 of the team's 12 players aren't planning on coming back.
They're calling Swoopes a hater and blasting her on social media. There's something weird going on here, though. It's like there's more to the story than just a disagreement about Rookie of the Year. Swoopes is just making stuff up about Caitlin Clark's college stats.